boy, what a rough ride it's been just to get here. Discovering that some secret organization's behind all these mishaps of censoring my thoughts on the film, heroes joining forces, betrayals happening, and defeating the grandmasters of this organization. There were many battles over the years, some with great success, and others with great losses. And at last, I was able to find a theater to actually watch the film and be able to express my thoughts freely on the 2020 Sonic the Hedgehog film. But first I had to sign a contract that bans my freedom of speech in talking about my opinions on the Sonic games. Yeah, well, nobody liked my opinions on the Sonic games anyway. So for this video, I'll be giving my thoughts on the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, as well as talk about its sequel. But first I might as well give my brief thoughts on the old Sonic OVA film. That's right, a proper review this time, and not that made-up bum rush review that I did for laughs on April Fool's Day. I remember getting this film on DVD at a Best Buy from back in the day, and it's a good thing too, because nowadays it's gone out of print and it's pretty hard to find. Anyway, it's more or less a loose adaptation of Sonic CD in a way, with Sonic dealing with Metal Sonic. Setting's very unique, voice acting's decent, minus Sonic and Tails, and the story's okay. Lots of cool stuff, wacky stuff, and surprisingly some risque stuff that I'm still surprised that they kept in the English dub. Overall, it's just okay. If you want to hear more about my thoughts on the film, then check out episode 21 of the Dissected Alive livestream series that I'm part of. Links are in the description. Now to start off, let's just say that the late 2010s was not a good time for me as a Sonic fan, with how the recent games and the social media were treating the series. And the first trailer for the film finally dropped, and oh hell broke loose. Yeah, since this is a video talking about the Sonic movie, it's required by internet law to talk about the original design for movie Sonic. Honestly, I really didn't care for it back then. I was just in that mindset of, meh, it's a film based on a video game. They all suck, so this'll be no surprise. In terms of the design, I think I was more on the lines of, whatever, at least it's something different for once. Plus, being an Archie Sonic fan, I'm already used to seeing weird designs for the Blue Hedgehog. So the internet and the public in general raged about it, and so it was delayed. Eventually, we got a second trailer showing off the new design, which was more well received. Back then, I was in a more cynical mindset about it, like, a redesigned model isn't going to change the film's writing, directing, and so on and so on. And that was just one easy way for people to gang up on me for saying that. Aside from that, the overhype over the redesign was really giving me some bad flashbacks to how overhyped Sonic Mania was back then. Nowadays, yeah, the redesign is more appealing. But I guess the old design didn't go to waste, because later on, it surprisingly showed up as a minor character in the Chip and Dale Rescues Rangers movie, now being dubbed as Ugly Sonic. Yeah, didn't expect that to happen. Anyway, with the release of the film coming closer, I was already at my boiling point over the franchise and how the fanbase treated it mostly just for the memes. Even so, I decided to go see the film, expecting it to be crap like all the other video game movies. I saw the film opening day because it was the only day that wasn't conflicting with my work schedule at my old job at the time. I got the ticket and I saw the film up on the big screen, and after all that I just said, you know what, fuck it, I'm not going to tell anyone about my opinions on this film. So for over 2 years I was pretty much trolling people by making this into a running gag of keeping it vague as possible, which I first demonstrated in my guest appearance on Sonic Movie Dissected. I try to state my opinion about the film, but then someone interrupts me, or the audio glitches, or someone kills me, or and so on and so on. I originally planned to keep going with it, where after many years or so, I would still keep my thoughts vague. But halfway through 2021, I was starting to notice that people were already getting tired of this running joke, and by then the sequel was already announced and shown off. After watching the second Sonic movie, I decided to drop the whole running gag and make a proper review on the films. And then the project was shelved for a long time. Yeah, honestly, I just kinda lost interest with the idea and was more busy and focused with my personal life, my current job, and lots of other video and art projects. So, after getting around to finally doing this project, and a couple of rewrites later, here we are, it's finally time. The story for the first film involves Sonic the Hedgehog starting life on his peaceful island, until an Echidna tribe comes in to try and take his special powers. He escapes to Earth for safety, only to later be hunted down by the military, mostly led by Dr. Robotnik, after he accidentally causes a massive power outage from his electricity powers. He befriends a local cop named Tom, and needs his help to find his warp rings to escape. And in the end, they defeat Robotnik, and Sonic decides to change his mind and live with Tom and Maddie in their home, no longer having to live alone, and live with a family instead. To put it bluntly, the film is very cliche. You know, it's another one of those alien/cartoon characters enters the real world, they befriend the human protagonist, the human keeps it away from the evil government, they gotta have the mandatory scene where the human and cartoon characters are in a car together, and so on and so on. Still lots of action stuff, and some scenes were nice. Sonic himself is pretty good. A nice new and likable take on the character. A bit more of a younger Sonic, cracking jokes, but knows when to take things seriously. And even deals with depression of living alone for so long. Definitely a big step up from how self-aware Pontiac and Graff had written this guy for a while. I like the human characters, most of them anyway. Tom and Maddie having a healthy relationship and already being married, which was a nice change of pace from how you would expect in these type of films. Tom is the one with the most focus, and he and Sonic play off of each other very well. A good example of showing that human and Sonic characters can work together. Manny's sister's alright, had a few chuckles with their lines. Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik is, well, Jim Carrey. Still, it's a fun performance, and it was nice that they decided to bring back the Dr. Robotnik name after it's been abandoned for so long. My least favorite ones are the more minor ones, aka the he's just there characters. Like Agent Stone, who is Robotnik's loyal assistant, who barely does anything and then completely disappears halfway through the film. Yeah, nice try, Stone, but you clearly ain't no Snively or Thunderbolt the Chinchilla. Then there's Crazy Carl, the crazy old man who believes that the Blue Devil, aka Sonic, is real, and tries to prove everyone that he is real. Yeah, he doesn't really do much in the film. There are some deleted scenes that would have given him more screen time, but instead, he mostly shows up just to show off that Sonic meme. Yuck. And then there's Wade, who is... honestly, I keep forgetting he was a thing in the movie. And then, of course, there's some random owl lady named Longclaw who takes care of Sonic before being separated when he escapes to Earth. I remember really disliking this character because of how she barely got any screen time and supposedly gets killed off instantly. That, and around that time, we'd already gone through Infinite and Dodonpaw, characters from the games that either had wasted potential or were just boring and forgettable, so I was not amused to see Longclaw fall into that category of forgettable Sonic characters. I remember buying the Blu-ray with the special comic, hoping that it would be some kind of a prequel story, but I was left disappointed when it ended up being nothing more than an abridged version of the entire film's plot. Now that I think about it, why did she have to stay behind when going up against the Echidnas? They were miles away from them when she activated the warp ring, and she's big enough to go through it. There does exist an alternate opening where she had a little more screen time, goes through the portal with Sonic, and then later dies of an illness. And yeah, I really wish they had kept this scene in the final version. Speaking of which, there is that one scene in the hotel where Sonic mentions her, and I was expecting Tom to ask him who she is. Then he would explain who she is, and then we get a flashback montage to help flesh her out more. But no, Tom never questions who she is. I guess he's just all like, huh, Longclaw. Must have been the name for Rockin' Sonic's Homeworld. Okay, enough complaining about Longclaw, so what else is there to talk about? Well, you might be surprised to hear that when I watched this film for the first time on Blu-ray, I started to suffer from a mental breakdown. And you probably think it's because of the scenes where Sonic's feeling lonely and all that, but not really. It's a lot more deeper. It's the whole scene where Tom gets accepted to move out of Green Hills and into San Francisco, looking up apartments, and the whole goodbye speech that he's rehearsing, that certain scene. The reason why that triggers my emotions so much was because when I first saw this film in the theaters, I was already scheduling and planning to move out of my parents' house for the first time to accept a new job in a new area, right when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Yeah, those early years of the pandemic moving out were not fun, dealing with a lot of emotional baggage, being on my own for the first time, being extremely paranoid during the early days when a vaccine hadn't been invented yet, arguing with myself on whether or not I should have stayed with my parents, then moving out, and lots of other things happening. And my parents weren't kicking me out or anything. The whole situation just ended up becoming a case of unforeseen bad timing. So whenever I sit through that scene, it just brings back all those bad memories, which causes me to start hyperventilating, and then later I start bawling my eyes out, and then later I have to pause the movie until I recovered. And to this day, I still can't get through that scene without breaking down in tears. I've seen this film like a couple times, and I keep telling myself, okay, the scene's coming up, you know what's gonna happen, you're gonna sit through this, you're not gonna break down in tears this time, and yet I still keep breaking down. I guess you could say this is the other reason why I kept my thoughts on the film so vague for so long. Never thought I'd actually suffer from a mental breakdown over this film, triggering some bad memories from the COVID-19 pandemic. The only other time this has happened was when I watched the Doctor Who episode Gridlock for the first time. Anyway, the story was decent even if some parts were predictable, but there are some rough areas, like the whole deal about Tom being branded as a terrorist when he's trying to get Sonic to San Francisco doesn't really go anywhere. The government's lack of involvement, as it's pretty much the Robotnik-only show throughout most of the film. And that whole product placement of the Olive Garden gift card at the end was so forced and cringy. But hey, at least the director of the film confirmed that Sonic's race car bed is based off the one on Archie Sonic, so that makes me a happy camper. The warp rings were a cool feature in the film. In the games, they just teleported you to a special stage, but now they act more like portals that lead you to whatever destination you want to go. Can't help but feel like this is also another Archie Sonic reference, since that's how the warp rings acted like in the comics, although the proper way to master them is kept a bit vague there. And of course, the other thing I liked were the action scenes. Big highlights for me after dealing with the meta era and the very low energy from the Sonic Boom TV show. One of my favorite scenes is the car chase, where Sonic and Tom are being chased by one of Robotnik's creations, then they defeat it, but then a smaller version pops up, and it keeps going for a while. And nice variety in destroying them too. Sonic destroys the first model with his lightning powers, then he takes down the second form on his own with no lightning powers, then Tom gets to have a moment in taking down the third form, and finally the final form with a barely surviving explosion. Even if it does create a bit of a plot hole for that whole scene with the bomb being stuck on Sonic's hand. I imagine this was already animated when they were originally going with the first model, which had no gloves, so that made sense. But since the second model has gloves, then it leaves me wondering why doesn't he just take the glove off to get rid of the bomb? And that's pretty much it. Now, onto my final thoughts on this film. Personally, in my honest opinion, I think that the 2020 Sonic the Hedgehog film is... okay. That's it. It's okay. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just okay. Oh yeah, and it features a mid-credits scene showing off Tails entering Earth to find Sonic. At first I brushed this off and was like, pfft, this will just end up like The Last Airbender in that live-action Mario Brothers film. Bait for a sequel that'll never happen. Well, turns out I was wrong, and we actually did get a sequel. Leading up to this film, I was a little more positive about it after seeing the first trailer. Not only did we get to see a few more sneak peeks of Tails, but it gave us the reveal that Knuckles the Echidna will be featured in this film as well. So, in this sequel, Sonic continues living on Earth, now living with Tom and Maddie. Dr. Robotnik escapes the mushroom planet that he was trapped on and teams up with Knuckles to find Sonic. Tails shows up to warn Sonic about the Echidna, and it all boils down to a race for the Master Emerald and its ultimate power. While the first film was all about a fish-out-of-water story, the sequel focuses more on family and teamwork, and I really like that. The family dynamic between Sonic, Tom, and Maddie was nice, and of course the Sonic and Tails dynamic was really good. I've seen some people complain about the whole dance-off scene that happens in the movie, but I didn't mind. I found it entertaining. Plus, it was important in actually showing Sonic and Tails developing their trust and friendship, becoming more stronger, and not do what the recent games do these days, where all they do is just say it and not show it. Tails is well done in this film, the young inventor looking up to Sonic and later inspiring him to be more brave. I remember hearing his voice in the mid-credits scene in the first film, and I actually thought that was Tara Strong voicing him, but it later turns out that he's voiced by his current voice actress from the games, and that was quite the surprise. Now for Knuckles. This is probably one of my favorite versions of the character. He is a tough and serious warrior from Sonic's old world, and he has a bit of a grudge against him, with the whole history of the owls fighting with the echidnas. He has a quest to defeat Sonic to avenge his people, and find the Master Emerald to restore honor to his tribe, who had once used its power. Of course, since this is the first time we have Knuckles, they had to do the whole thing where Robotnik is tricking Knuckles and yada yada yada. Here, this feels more like a fresh new take on the idea. Robotnik starts off in meeting Knuckles and leading him to Sonic's whereabouts just to watch him beat up the Hedgehog. Then, when he overhears Knuckles talking about the Master Emerald, he secretly begins to scheme behind his back to obtain ultimate power for himself. And yeah, this version of Knuckles isn't bright at times, but in this film, it makes more sense simply because he's a warrior from another planet who doesn't know anything about Earth's customs. Big improvement with how terrible he's been handled in the games for so long. Especially with the Sonic Boom version, where he's mostly stupid just for the sake of being stupid. As for the other characters, they're all nice. Jim Carrey gets more screen time to ham it up as Robotnik. They established Gun, which I was very excited about since that was an organization that hasn't been relevant in years. And I started to give a little bit of a damn over Longclaw with the established backstory of the Echidnas and her hologram appearance. In fact, the film improved a lot of things for these characters. Maddie and her sister get to have some fun on screen, the government is a little more involved this time, Agent Stone is remembered and is actually more active. Heck, even Wade gets to have a moment in the film. The action scenes are still the highlights like before, but this time they really went all out. All those various moments of Sonic fighting Knuckles, and the climax where Robotnik obtains the Master Emerald's power and constructs the Egg Destroyer battlesuit. Yeah, that was awesome. And of course ending with Super Sonic defeating him. Makes you wonder if this particular shot of Super Sonic lifting up the robot's foot was inspired by that one scene from the Genesis story arc in Archie Sonic. It was also interesting to see how the Master Emerald was handled in this film. Usually it's a big emerald keeping Angel Island floating, but in this film's universe, it's a source of ultimate power that was once used by the Echidnas when they fused the 7 Chaos Emeralds into the Master Emerald. Which also makes me wonder if that's another Archie Sonic reference, as they both have similar origins. Haha. Now, in terms of what I didn't like about the film, honestly, not much. I guess all I could think of is the whole wedding subplot. I mean, I'm fine with it when it's at the altar to the rescue mission and all that, but the scenes that happened before that could have been cut down or just removed entirely. Also, I find it weird that they show Sonic having one of Longclaw's feathers inside of his old map, something that wasn't established in the first film. I guess it's just one of those minor retcon details. Overall, I really like this film, definitely better than the first one. And of course, it has a mid-credits scene, this time teasing that Shadow the Hedgehog will be in the next one. Well, after seeing how Tails and Knuckles were handled in the film, I'm a little optimistic about Shadow's appearance. From the start of the meta era, Shadow's character was starting to decline in the quality of how he was written. Sonic Boom decided to make him more of a generic edgelord, which the main games later solidified this take of the character, a good example being Team Sonic Racing. And IDW Sonic only made things worse. But then again, we now have Shadow in Sonic Prime, and so far, that version feels more like a step in the right direction. So here's hoping Sonic Movie 3 will finally give Shadow the respect that he's been lacking for over 10 years. I also heard talks about a spin-off series focusing on Movie Knuckles that'll be on Paramount+, but there hasn't been any updates about that in months. Like, was that just a hoax? Is it still being worked on? Is it cancelled? I don't know. I guess I should briefly mention that bonus short and the prequel comic for the movie. They're nice. Yeah, not much to say about them. So, there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the Sonic films. The first one is cliché, but very average, while the sequel is a huge improvement in being more like the games and celebrating the franchise in a more positive way. So now I'm just waiting for the upcoming Sonic Movie 3 and find some way to watch the Knuckles spin-off series, if that's still gonna be a thing. That's about it for this review, so I'll see you next time.